Good morning. I'm Harley Schlanger from the LaRouche Organization with your daily video update for September 20th, 2024. Yesterday was a day of infamy for the European Union Parliament, which showed the extent to which it is a vassal state, that is the European Union, controlled entirely by the transatlantic or Anglo-American military cartel. They voted a package of sanctions and measures by a 425 to 131 margin, which include eliminating a limitation of what Ukraine can do with the long-range missiles they're getting from the West. It also included packages of sanctions in an attempt to shut off any traffic, any trade at all with Russia. Now, this comes after the Biden-Starmer meeting last Friday, in which the hoped-for go-ahead from Biden did not come. There's holding back on this from the United States, and it's clear that this has completely irritated the pro-war, anti-Russian faction in NATO, which is pushing to remove these limitations because they want to go for the kill. They really think that that Putin is bluffing about responding against NATO. They really believe that the new weapons will be the winning margin that's needed. And of course, this is what Zelensky keeps telling them. He once again talked about victory, that Ukraine is prepared for victory. All it needs is to be released from the limits placed on it by the West. Now, the package includes more sanctions. This is an attempt to cut off any trade with Russia. And this goes against the insistence of many businesses, especially in Germany, that they need to be free to trade with Russia and with China. And so the European situation is going to continue to be a fight between people who believe in the sovereignty of European nations versus those who are committed to being vassals under the Anglo-American hammer. Now, at the same time this is going on in Europe, Israel is moving toward a broader, wider war in Southwest Asia. Excuse me. You had a couple of days ago the exploding pagers, then the exploding other devices. Now a massive bombing of Hezbollah missile sites has taken place in the last 12 hours. The Jerusalem Post reported that orders have been sent out to be on standby for a ground invasion of Lebanon. Now, this is something that Israeli military officials have been hesitant to support. The problems they've had in Gaza with Hamas are nothing compared to what they expect with Hezbollah. Clearly, they think the exploding pagers weakened Hezbollah, demoralized them, and maybe created the potential to move effectively against Hezbollah on the ground. It's unlikely to be the case, but the possibility of a broader war is definitely there, and there's nothing impeding Netanyahu because no one is standing up against him and his crazed Greater Israel fanatics. So with this as a background, I come to your questions. I received a few questions. Let me start with one from an American podcaster who asked, why is the U.S. unwilling to use its leverage to stop Israel? Well, there's a short and a medium-term and a long-term answer to that. The short-term answer is the power of the Zionist lobby, which is totally committed to do whatever it feels is necessary to support Israel. Secondly, there's the military-industrial financial complex lobby, which is for any kind of war, any kind of expenditure on military production, and committed to the idea of permanent warfare. Then you have political expediency, especially on the Republican side of appealing to the so-called Christian Zionists, the Armageddonists, who believe that the U.S. must support Israel so that this will bring about it's so crazy, it's hard to even discuss this. But that by having a war of Armageddon in the Middle East, that will hasten the return of Jesus. And that's the belief of some of the fanatics in the Christian Zionist movement. Then there's also the narrative that if you don't support Israel, you're anti-Semitic. No matter what Israel does, you have to support it, or else you're a neo-Nazi right-wing extremist. Now, the longer-term answer to this is geopolitics. If you look at what Mackinder discussed, the idea of the intersection, the crossroads that the Middle East represents, the connection between Asia, Africa, and Europe, and that whoever controls this controls one of the key choke points for trade, raw materials, and so on. And this is an extremely important factor for the British. That's why the British moved in during World War I with the Sykes-Picot Agreement to carve up the nations there, with the Balfour Declaration to create the State of Israel. It wasn't love of the Jews that had them do that. It was geopolitics. It was the geography and the intersection of politics that caused the British to conclude they needed to do in the Southwest Asia exactly what they did in the Indian subcontinent and in Ireland, which is find groups to pit against each other, to have permanent unrest, permanent war, and an excuse for the imperial forces to come in from the top to exert influence and control. Now, that's been the history of that region. And there's anyone who knows anything about it realizes that's true. Now, there's a more recent aspect of this, which is the BRICS. With the BRICS movement, you have an alternative financial system which is slowly but surely gaining steam outside of the dollar system, which includes moves to national currencies, possibly a unified currency at some point. But the more important part is that it's a commitment to cooperation and mutual benefit. And that goes against what the geopoliticians want, which is constant irritation and warfare. Look at it this way. If you look at what's surrounding that area in Southwest Asia, you have new BRICS members: Egypt, Ethiopia, Iran, United Arab Emirates, and probably the Saudi Arabian government. All of them are affected by the Israeli attack on the Palestinians and the possibility of a broader war. Also, Turkey could be brought into this, and Turkey is one of the newer applicants for membership in the BRICS. So how do the BRICS function as a cooperative entity if you have this kind of war underway? And so this is a crucial strategic factor in the thinking of the Anglo-American imperialists who are trying to use this region to destabilize an alternative system. Now, finally, the oligarchy is using the Zionists in Israel the same way they're using the Ukrainians against Russia, as an expendable force, as a sledgehammer to attack their enemies. In this case, the Islamic world, the Arab world. In Ukraine, the enemy is Russia. And so they will fight to the last Ukrainian or the last Zionist to carry out this tactic. Now, the second question is, do you know if the U.S. military was involved in the decision of Biden not to go ahead with the release of Ukraine from the restrictions on use of long-range weapons? I only know what I've been hearing from various people with military and intelligence connections, and they're saying the military is essentially saying, don't be foolish. Don't assume that Putin is bluffing. Don't take the risk. We're not prepared for a broader war in Ukraine or in the Middle East. And so the idea that Blinken and Lamy from the United Kingdom can go ahead and convince the United States to unleash these weapons against Russia with no consequences, that may have been vetoed by saner heads from the military. It's a reverse of the Cuban Missile Crisis, where the military was saying, go ahead and bomb, kill, maim, and it was John Kennedy who held them back. So I don't have any definitive answers, except that it seems to make sense, and this is what people like Larry Johnson and Ray McGovern and Colonel McGregor are saying. Now then there were some questions on censorship. Is it effective? Well, it is effective in a way, because it confuses the issue. And instead of seeing the danger implied by U.S. policy, people are blocked on it. But keep in mind that the East German government had total control of media and censorship, and still the 1989 revolution took place. The purpose of censorship is to suppress discussion and ideas. You want to defeat it? Go out and talk, organize, get other people thinking. And with that, let me come to the final point. People are asking about how can they participate in the Zoom calls of the International Peace Coalition. This week's IPC, International Peace Coalition, will be meeting today at 11 a.m. Eastern. And I have a link to the discussion in the description box below. The speakers will include Scott Ritter, Jonathan Kutab, who's the head of Nonviolence International, and Moshe Raz, who's a former Knesset member in Israel, and the former Director General of Peace Now. And of course, Helga Zepp-LaRouche will be participating. The IPC has been charting a course of peace by bringing together all sorts of different groups and organizations. It's making a tremendous amount of headway, but we need more people involved. So log on today, join it, get other people to join it. And in the meantime, the best I can tell you is fight like hell for a change. Don't submit to censorship or to bullying. Be a spokesman for truth and goodness. And I'll see you next week.